From the iHeartRadio studios in New York City, come fans of the greatest rock and roll band hailing from Hollywood, California. Dissecting all things Guns N' Roses and anything else distorted. 'Cause you know what the fuck you are! This is Appetite for Distortion. Time to die!
And welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion. My name is Brando. Episode 46. I think it's kind of divine intervention because I took out my 46 jersey from my mom's house, Andy Pettit, to wear because I still fit in my kids' clothes because I haven't grown since, I don't know, 5th grade. So everything still fits me, Todd. I don't know what it is. So episode 46 of the AFD show. We'll get to my co-host in just a second, just because I like to start and end everything awkward, kind of like my life. So my name is Brando, of course, and I appreciate everyone joining episode 46, and it's been quite a ride thus far. And my co-host slash, well, I guess I posted in a weird way. My last episode was with Tyler Bryant, and I said the same thing to him. And I said my co-host slash interview, and he's like, "We're doing a slash interview?" Maybe I should pick my wording more carefully. My co-host and interview, that being Todd Kerns. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm living the dream. Where are you calling from, first and foremost?
I'm calling from my house in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay. How's the weather there? Because it's pouring here in New York City.
It's really been warm lately. I spent most of the winter in Los Angeles, but I just came home today for an unrelated vault experience with Gene Simmons over here in Las Vegas. Which is a whole other conversation.
Yes, I want to ask you about that because we were going to, I appreciate you working around your schedule and my schedule. So we made today work. So, I want to talk to you about the vault thing coming up. And as I kind of warned you about before our pre-interview, I start every episode with a news segment, and you're going to be my co-host for this part. So chime in whenever you want. You're my rock and roll Andy Richter. And I call this one Shotgun News. News! See, Todd, it's going to be that kind of show.
I love it.
So first, I do want to say thank you to for our last episode, Tyler Bryant. Of course, Tyler Bryant and the Shakedown. He was just incredible. I can't believe at 26 years old who he's played with, who he's met. In addition, of course, opening for AC/DC, Axl DC, and Guns N' Roses, the primary reasons, but B.B. King, and he was in close quarters recording with Chris Cornell. I mean, it's just, I want to hear more stories, and there's something at the end I do want to, because there's a Cornell tie now forever in the G&R world, and sad or not, I want to talk about that a little bit later on, but this is the light news segment.
Bring it on.
And also, the next bit of G&R news, Shotgun News, Adler's Appetite is back. And that according to...
I hear that.
Yeah, that according to, of course, Alex Grassi, another former co-host and guest of mine as well.
Totally.
So Alex said he's going to come on as soon as they announce those dates. And it's going to be a anniversary tour of Appetite for Destruction, which leads to so many different questions.
I just did a run of dates with Alex and Dizzy, doing Dizzy's Hookers and Blow over the New Year's Eve kind of hang.
Yeah, you're part of...
Good dudes, good friends.
Yeah, because you're on that episode we spoke to Don Jameson as well, so you're kind of part of the Hookers and Blow family, which is kind of cool, because you never know who's going to show up.
Yeah. You never know. That's the thing. Yeah, it's. John Kelly from Typo plays drums. I'm a huge Typo nerd, so it's been a lot of fun.
You got the Peter Steele thing going a little bit.
A friend of mine once said, you come off like Peter Steele's little brother, and I go, no, I think I come off like Peter Steele's little sister.
I was thinking, as I'm looking through photos, the posting on social media to, get questions for you, which we're going to get into from listeners, and I'm like, he's like if Ian Astbury and Peter Steele had, if there was like a third Hansen brother, that would be the Todd Kerns. I like it.
I love it. Marilyn Hansen, I think we go.
Oh, I like that. Oh, it's too good. And wrapping up the with Shotgun News, which is, kind of Adler news, which, hoping to get more information from Alex when we get to speak to him. He's going to be coming out with a new book, which is interesting because this is an interesting concept. I don't know if you heard about. Have you read his first book, by the way, or I don't know if you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm a big book guy, so whenever my friends kick out books, I have to read them.
Okay. So, yeah, slashes, obviously. Or do you just read it to see if your name is mentioned? Is that why?
Yeah. See if I have to sue anybody? No, I'm kidding. I'm not mentioned in Steven's book.
Okay. But this is, I was like, okay, his mom came out with a book. He's already kind of come out with his autobiography. What's next? Is he going to do a Christmas story like Mick Foley? I don't know. This one's going to be called Steven Adler, The Shit My Friends Remember I Did.
Oh, my God.
So he said, quote, now that I'm sober, I'm talking to the people, and they're telling me stories, and it's just blank up there. There's nothing there. So I decided to put a book together, a reminder of the stories. So I can't even imagine what that's going to be like. If the stuff that he remembers is crazy, what he doesn't remember. So good for him. That's I don't know if I have the stones ever to do that. I don't want to know about the things that I mentally repressed. I don't want to.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to ask strangers to sort of piece together your past. Oh boy.
But we're gonna piece together your past, Mr. Kerns. I don't know.
Oh God.
I don't think it's from when I read, or at least you don't have the TMZ articles out there. I don't know if you about your upbringing, and it's very cool. And and you mentioned, and you got it before in the pre-interview, whatever you want to call it, this
right.
Guns N' Roses web, and I relate it to even my life, and I've mentioned before an ex-girlfriend of mine who's from Ottawa, because you're a Canadian.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we met through Guns N' Roses back in the days of LiveJournal. But before, before Facebook and before all these things. That's how you found people with common interests. So we liked Axl, and that's how we connected. And her mom is from Saskatchewan. And
okay, wow.
And so you're from Saskatchewan, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Born and raised.
There it is. There's the tie. It all makes sense. That's the G&R, 6 degrees of G&R bacon. So
exactly.
I've been to Ottawa. I've been to Quebec. I've been to Montreal. What's Saskatchewan like?
Well, it's kind of like the Midwest. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's...
for us, like me, like an American, like what can I relate it to?
That's tough for me because it's so much more like I grew up in literally a small town, like 1,500 people. No street lights, no 7-Eleven, no McDonald's. Just everybody knows everybody. Where I grew up, it's like, freezing. Like this time of year right now, it makes what you're dealing with out there look, balmy. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
It's like gnarly, like the movie Fargo times 10, in the winter. And, and I quickly, as soon as I graduated from high school, it was like I started moving west. It's kind of like, it takes a while in Canada to get to, you get to the West Coast and it's not snowing anymore. But Vancouver, where I lived for about 15 years before I came to the States, it's gray and rainy like Seattle for a good chunk of the year. And then once I made my way south, it was like, oh, damn. Okay. Of course I'd been touring through the U.S. for years and years and years. So when it finally became like, let's go to the desert, it's sort of like hard to look back now when you've missed a bunch of winters. It's like, I'm good.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. That was part of, in addition to all the boring ex-girlfriend stories, I'm like, I don't know if it was only in Ottawa. I'm like, I can't deal with that. And that's just not that's just not for me. I've tried actually moving it down south and out west here in the States, but something about New York keeps bringing me back in. Maybe it's my accent.
Oh, I love New York.
Oh, sure. I love it. I just don't, the winter sucks. I hate it.
It sucks, but it's funny because when you go to Canada, it's like, oh, it's colder here than it is here, and it's colder here than it is there, and I'm like, dude, it's cold, and when it's cold, it's cold. It doesn't matter if it's like, like I'm talking like I'm not going outside. It's cold, it's like, so it doesn't really matter if it's like, 20 below or 30 below zero. It's kind of like that's just ridiculous to me. So I miss it in a funny way. My wife and I talk about it all the time because she just went back to, she's from around Toronto.
Okay.
She just went back to see family, and it was cold. And I had this sort of like feeling of like, oh, wow, I kind of miss, experiencing it. I mean, at least now when we experience the cold, it's more of like a swoop in, check it out, and then get the hell out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just about to say, because you miss it because you know you can leave.
Exactly.
if you were deported back to Saskatchewan or whatever,
who
knows what Trump is up to? I mean, maybe you're next. Maybe
I might be. You never know.
So I guess we can kind of start there. If you're growing up in a place with no streetlights and it's just horrible outside, what obviously it's hyperbole.
Right.
What did you like? What kind of kid were you? Did you trap yourself inside, listening to music? Did you play, with moose? Like what kind of? Sorry, I'm a dumb American who just makes stereotypes.
Yeah. The stereotype is always that you either played hockey, which of course I did as well. It was the law. You just kind of like, as soon as you could walk, you were on skates. But I think like anybody, sort of, music was always around. It might have been a little out of touch because. It was a little remote and a little far from, the mainstream kind of scene. But that doesn't mean that Kiss or, Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and everything was, obviously it was just all a part of, of our life. So, I think like anybody, I picked up a guitar at about 11 years old and then just sort of never put it down, until now, And I think that sort of, dictated everything. I think at the time you're not really considering anything like, I'm going to make this a career or a job or a life. You just kind of, you pick up a guitar and eventually you start playing with friends. I started playing with guys who were much older than me. For whatever reason, there were a lot of, guys who played guitar and a lot of guys who played drums and put bands together and stuff like that and in these small towns. And I just ended up playing with guys who were quite a lot older than me and wanted to go on the road. And of course I was still like 15 by the time I was like, in this position. And then, the day, my parents begged me to finish high school, I was just like 1 foot out the door, ready to go. And, and then as soon as I was out of high school, I was on the road. And that's basically when I left where I grew up. And then I just started making my way. Well, we toured across Canada 1,000 times and into the States, and that sort of, took us where we, in a very long. It sounds like it, and then I moved to the States. It's like no, there was like 20 years of me traveling and touring and writing and recording and getting record deals and getting dropped from record deals and all that stuff, and then finding myself down here.
Sure. Were your, I like the contrast from just one episode to the next, because last, which we mentioned, Tyler Bryant, who didn't graduate high school. I mean, he did later on, took online classes, but he was like one credit away, and he went to his parents. He's like, I got to do this now or never. I gotta move to Nashville. You were begged to. So like, were your parents supportive, and they just kind of wanted that backup, or did they believe? I don't want to say, did they believe in you? I'm sure they believed in their little Todd to an extent. Well, not so little, I guess. I don't know how.
Yeah. But I guess it's sort of a little bit of all of that. But I think parents in general, I think even as a parent now, it's sort of like, I imagine for them, especially living in rural, small town Saskatchewan, the idea of anybody being able to make a career for themselves playing music must have seemed like, I don't know, like I'm going to be a superhero or, something like that. It just seemed like mildly ridiculous to them.
Sure.
Probably not ridiculous is not the right word, just unrealistic, I think,
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they've always been supportive of, playing music, but I think like a lot of people think, well, music is something you do, but it's not something you necessarily pursue unless it's I don't know, like classical music and getting some sort of getting into college doing that or whatever. But I had no interest in a secondary education. Job. Yeah, or go to school and take things like that. but I never really had any interest in secondary education. My secondary education was to get in a van and drive around with my friends playing in, places and just kind of, cutting your teeth that way. So, it's like, I think that they're, just get high school. Because, back then, I mean, now it's, at least that way, if you have high school, you can, I don't know, be a Walmart greeter or something. I don't know. I don't know what their thoughts were, but I just figured it was always kind of like, whatever. I mean, I was the same as Tyler. I was like, by the time I was about 15, 16, I was ready to go. I was like in a band, we were kicking ass, and I was ready to, take on the world. But, I don't regret it. I don't regret obviously finishing high school. And it's funny because back then, a year or 2 years is all makes all the difference in the world. But now looking back on it, it's like a year or 2 years just is nothing in the big picture. But at the time, it was very important.
Oh, absolutely. That all makes sense. So when was the decision for you when you're growing up playing, with guys older than you? Like, what kind of bands were you in? Was it all Rush cover bands around you? Like, what kind of bands were you in? Sorry, I can't.
When we first started, it was like a lot of cover stuff. It was like when I was a kid, we would play like high school dances. There was a whole scene of like after Friday after school, we would take off and play in another town doing a high school dance, and then Saturday night do some sort of party, and then come back. So we would do weekends when I was still a kid. And then eventually once we started moving into the club world, that was a lot of, in where I grew up, it was like mostly a cover scene, but you could play like 6 nights a week, just traveling around the country playing music. So for me, it was like, I always refer to it as like the Hamburg years, like when the Beatles went to Hamburg.
Sure.
Did lots of pills and stayed up and played like 5-6 sets a night.
Jeez.
It's kind of like that, where you're just playing and playing and playing, and you're becoming, building that 10,000 hours kind of thing. And for me, it was just largely, like to this day, I'm more comfortable on stage than I am in real life, because it's like, I can just step on stage and entertain because I've been doing it since I was, a kid. And I think that, if anything, I think that the biggest lesson I learned was just being on stage, as well as, obviously within that framework, we started to kind of create our own music, and that sort of shifted everything to another direction where playing our own music became the focus. And that happened very fast. Like once I was sort of like, we put together a band with my brother called The Age of Electric. We had a deal up in Canada. We have a gold record in Canada, and we did really well for our little scene up here before I moved to the United States. But so we went from being like a bunch of kids, just getting out on the road and playing and act the fool just because it's great to kind of get out and play music every day, and then you kind of become refined and more serious about how we should do this. There was no framework in mind like in Hollywood back in the day where it was like you go and play shows, you build an audience, then the record companies come and you get signed. There was no such plan in place at all for us. It was just kind of like a bunch of assholes just driving around the country playing rock and roll,
Sometimes, and usually that is kind of the best way. So did your brother have the same vision or a lack thereof, I guess, or just like, let's just have fun and just see where this goes? We're having too good of a time.
Well, I was the older brother, so I think a lot of it was sort of like he sort of fell into playing, playing as well. And then just sort of, when you start putting bands together, it's just kind of like, well, your brother is sort of like just part of the equation, you know what I mean? And he's a much better player than I am in many ways. But I suppose in a lot of ways I was kind of more the sort of vision guy, I hesitate to use words like visionary, but I think I had an idea of what I wanted to do or how we could actually do this kind of thing, and, by that point, really starting to focus on being a real band, not just kind of like, let's go play shows just to play shows, but more like writing and recording and all that stuff that goes along with the whole DIY, doing it yourself punk rock attitude. But I think that, you learn a lot from those days, just kind of like when no one cares, you're kind of like, it's like no one is going to give you the time of day, so you kind of have to just get out there and slug it out. And we slugged it out for a long time.
Yeah, you kind of have to figure it out by yourself. I mean, it's not like there's a rule book or there's a way of how to do it. You kind of just find
Not at all.
your own way of doing it. And that's cool that you got your brother there to experience that with you. I mean, a lot of people, most do it by themselves, and that could be, scary. So it's a nice little backup to have family there.
Over 2015 and from 2015 to 2017, basically, my brother and I, we did the reunion show of that band. We hadn't played together in like 17 years by 2015. So when the World on Fire with Slash tour was sort of winding down, we did a one-off show in Canada with the Age of Electric. And it turned into we re-released our an album that had come out back in 97 as a 20th anniversary package. We recorded 5 new songs for an EP. We went on the road, went across Canada. It was it was a really awesome thing to do, because when a band splits up and everybody goes off in other directions and has a whole other life, as we most certainly did, and myself especially, because I actually left the country. It was nice to kind of get back together while, Myles is doing Alter Bridge and Slash is doing Guns N' Roses. It was kind of like, I just sort of had this opportunity come up where it was like, well, now you can go back. And me and Slash have laughed about the weird parallels of us going back in time in the last couple of years.
Sure.
Of, him doing his thing and then me doing my thing. It was sort of, it was very therapeutic, I suppose, to some degree, because bands never never really end well. It's like they're not usually. So it's good to get on the same stage together and go, hey, we did this. This is great, and then you can sort of put it behind you. By 2019 will be the 30th anniversary of that band. Like from we first started playing shows in '89, which is crazy to consider, but now we're kind of like,
not to make you feel bad. Sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? Like it's nuts to think about. So we'll probably try and do something next year, just whether it's a one-off or anything, just as a 30th anniversary fun party would be great.
That's awesome. And I speak for many listeners, because when I put out there for questions, because we're going to get into, especially we got a celebrity question. That
interesting.
Yes, people were asking about Age of Electric, and they want to hear more about that band. Which is that must be nice. Again, right? That must be so nice, because you were so humble about it, just explaining at the beginning. Yeah, we got a gold record, yeah, whatever, and you kind of just went over it, and it's cool again with play with your brother and the Slash parallel. That's awesome. So that question that helps out Spoon. I'm sure that's not his real name on my G&R forum, but he did ask, in addition to wanting to hear more about Age of Electric, and the 30th year anniversary is awesome. Did you ever sound check any Age with Slash or Myles? Yeah, those are questions that I get.
No, not really. That would be so weird. Like they're not even really kind of like largely aware of it.
I didn't think so, but I guess I want to do my due diligence and say, hey, I listened to your questions. So
a crazy story though is back in about 91, 92, the Age of Electric did a couple dates in Los Angeles on the Sunset Strip. We did a Friday night at the Whiskey A Go-Go and a Saturday night at the Roxy. And we had sort of relocated to Los Angeles for a stretch, because we were doing this whole big kind of push of trying to get, like the usual thing. We're doing a couple shows. You're treating them as showcase dates to try and get record labels out, blah, blah, blah. The usual nonsense, And back then, the carryover of the 80s Sunset Strip was still alive and well. And it was, you'd go to the Rainbow every night by the end of the night, and there'd be everybody in there, all the members from the pages of Metal Edge magazine, just everybody was there. Lemmy was always there. But I mean, we sat there in that back booth, the very back one against the wall that you see in the November Rain video. And it was just me and my band, just sitting there. I think a couple of our crew guys, and Slash was in the corner, right next to us, corner booth. And he got up. I've told him this story 1,000 times. It's so funny because he gets up and he sits down with us. He goes, "Hey, who are you guys?" And we're kind of like, at the time, Use Your Illusion hadn't been released yet, so that probably is a good indication of when what year it was, because we watched them film the scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger that's tagged on at the end of You Could Be Mine, the You Could Be Mine video. Cool. But anyway, it was like, these guys were the biggest band on the planet, and Slash was the most visible in many ways of all of them, next to Axl. And he just sort of sat down with us like these jackasses from Saskatchewan, Canada. And he just sort of like, hey, how's it going? And he's smoking, lighting everybody cigarettes and just being like, and we're like, he's like the mayor of the Sunset Strip or something. He's like the coolest guy,
Did Slash have a sash if he was the mayor?
Man!
Sorry, I had to.
Well, now that would be impressive. But it was, and then you flash forward like, oh, geez, I mean, I'm trying to think, 20 years or whatever it was, and then we ended up playing together. But at the time, it was sort of like, wow, what a cool guy, and but he has no recollection of that. He was, elegantly wasted to some degree. He was having a good time.
Well, that means
not that guy anymore. None of us are.
In the same vein of Steven Adler's new book, now you can contribute to. If Slash has a second book, the shit my friends remember I did Slash's version.
All he ever says to me when I first told him that story was he just said, "Well, was I nice?" And I go, "Yeah, you're right." He has no recollection of. I mean, he wasn't drooling or anything like that. He was just definitely having a good time.
No, I got you. Maybe a little glass-eyed. So how did we get from? How did you get from that point? You mentioned, with your bands, whether it be with your brother or not, you had done so much touring already.
Yeah.
And going back, and not even just in Canada, of course, and going before you moved to the States. So, and stop me if I'm missing important steps. So when did you go to L.A. and meet all these people? Like, when was, I guess, that domino effect to, having Slash randomly just hang out with you to actually working with him, all these years later? Or am I missing something?
Well, I mean, The Age of Electric was a funny band because we had the audacity to just go, we're going to go to L.A. or we're going to go to New York and we're going to do these crazy things that, to just, try and advance our career, and just sort of do these things. So in a funny way, I've been been in the States for years. We eventually signed with Mercury Records out of New York, and we had management out of New York. So, I mean, we were in New York all the time, and by this point we were relocated to Vancouver, Canada, which is, like I said, is on the West Coast. Bob Rock, the producer, had done the Black Album for Metallica and Dr. Feelgood for Motley, and he sort of took us under his wing, and so we moved out to Vancouver to work with him, and it just it was just a constant sort of dipping into the States, and we really kind of wanted to keep an eye on the international sense of it, the States, Europe, Asia, South America, whatever we could do. Unfortunately, the band never lasted long enough to really capitalize on any of it. We just sort of imploded, as a lot of bands do. And by that point, I sort of, my brother and I did another project, which we all really loved, but it just kind of is a weird, so when the downloading and all that started to happen, that's when shit got really crazy. Because it's sort of like, then you had to really kind of reevaluate because, we'd sort of been on this, in a weird way, we had sort of lived in a record company mentality for a minute. So how do you do this without the support of a company and blah, 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 blah. And I kind of did a solo record, which, still gets a lot of love. And I started producing bands. My intention was, well, then I'll produce bands. I have a family now and I can stay home and I could be off the road. But then I found myself in a studio for 23 hours a day. So I may as well have been on the road, so I didn't find the production aspect as rewarding as the artist side of being a musician. I always loved the studio and I always loved working with other artists, but I don't think I was really ready to kind of like let go of my own thing and sort of be a part of somebody else's story, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Felt like I still had a lot to do, a lot for myself to do. So long story short, I just kind of had friends that had relocated to Las Vegas who and they kept hounding me to come down. They were working on a new project, and I was like, I'll come down and check it out, and I came down and I hooked up with Brent Muscat from Faster Pussycat, is still a really good friend of mine. And he had put together this version of Faster Pussycat to go to Europe. And I was like, and he asked me to play guitar. And I was like, well, I've never been to Europe. That'd be great. So in a funny way, that sort of cemented my stay in Las Vegas. We went to Europe and we did a big thing. And Brent and I both decided when we got back to Vegas, we'd try and put together a sort of pseudo residency in Las Vegas, which was very common in Las Vegas to do. Every Thursday night, go see this,
Sure.
So we put together a band. We called it the Sin City Sinners, and we just played every Tuesday night. We had George Lynch come up and play from Dawkins, or Sylvain from the New York Dolls, or Cheetah Chrome from the Dead Boys, or basically anybody you could think of. Slim Jim Phantom from the Stray Cats, just almost anybody we could think of. There was just turned into this constant jam session, and it became popular enough that we started playing showrooms in Las Vegas. What started as a literal dive bar band just sort of somehow became embraced by a really sort of mainstream Las Vegas thing. So we're suddenly playing showrooms in Las Vegas, and at this point, like, I'd lived my whole life on the road for, I was a grown-ass man at this point. And suddenly it was like doing residency stuff around Vegas, and just sort of like I started to have this weird, like, for the first time in my life, in a weird way, just kind of like I live in a house and roll the garbage cans out on garbage day, but I still, play rock and roll, but I just happen to, have a normal life to some degree. And that was, oddly, I was very much ready to be like, well, this is it. This is a great little sort of like he rides off into the sunset, being the king of Las Vegas, playing around town.
Nothing wrong with that.
And then nothing wrong with it. I had the time of my life, honestly. It was like we had a blast, and we really did well with it. And then I got the call for Slash, and that changed everything. And that's sort of like, everything was perfectly fine here. I had like, was doing really well, and then, made a really good living out here. And then I was buying a house, I was being a grown-up all of a sudden, like having to do things like that. And I was in the middle of like, closing on a house, and Brent Fitz, the drummer for Slash, just randomly called and said, could you be in North Hollywood tomorrow at noon? And I was like, yeah, why? What's up? I was, come jam with Slash. That's basically all it was. It was never like a tryout. It was kind of like just come jam. I was under the impression at that point that they'd already had a lineup together, because Fitz joined Slash, and he had players together. Myles Kennedy was involved. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, good for you. And then when he called me, I was like, okay, I'll come check it out. And then, and long story short, it just sort of all became, that's the way it's been ever for the last almost 8 years now, yeah.
So what was going through your mind? You were totally cool with the lack of a better analogy being like kind of the Wayne rock and roll Newton and doing your own thing. And then you get this random call from fellow Canadian, right?
Yes. Yeah, I've known Fitz for like 25 years, 25 years probably.
I just love, I joke, but I don't know why in my life I've dated so many Canadian women. I like Canada. So what was going through your mind then when you got that random call and it wasn't, hey, try out, just a jam session? What tricks did your mind play on you saying, is this an opportunity? This is just a chance to meet somebody that, I saw these years ago. So what was going through your mind at that point, that moment in time?
Well, the funny thing was, it's like, like the whole thing I'd been doing in Las Vegas was a straight up sort of jam band kind of thing. And
like Camp Freddy? Really... is it like a Camp Freddy kind of thing?
Yeah, it was definitely like a Camp Freddy sort of thing. And we just sort of would have like, this person's going to come play. We go, cool, let's learn, Phil Lewis is coming to jam. Let's learn some LA Guns songs, and we would play like a full, little mini set of stuff to play with these people. So the idea of jamming with Slash was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm like, because I was playing guitar and singing and playing bass, basically the best thing about being in Vegas for me was it really sort of opened up a whole other side of myself again to be kind of like multi-instrumentalist. And, it's like, come play bass? And I was like, hell yeah. And I literally threw my stuff in the car and drove to North Hollywood. And I didn't go over any music. I didn't really even listen to anything. I just sort of know what I know. It's like, which is a lot, frankly.
Right.
I could play Guns N' Roses songs all day long. So, it's like when someone says, we're going to jam with Lemmy. It's like I jam with Lemmy several times, in my life. And it was, never was it not like incredibly awesome to be doing that. So when someone says, come jam with Slash, I go, well, hell yeah, let's do this, So in my mind, I wasn't naive enough to think like, after I got the phone, I was kind of like, well, what does that mean, come jam with Slash? Of course, there was a part of me that was like, well, there must be something more to this than what's being said to me. But yeah, we just, I just came down there and jammed. I think I only ever remember playing like Night Train and something else. And then it was kind of like, next thing I knew, we were like in talks about like, we got to be on Jay Leno next week and all this kind of stuff. I was like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Because like I said, I had a whole other life in Las Vegas. I had a whole other, career in Las Vegas. So I had to kind of put all that on pause while I went and did this other thing. And we didn't know if Slash was going to be, I don't know, like a couple of months of flying out on weekends and doing just appearances to support the solo album he had done with all those multiple singers, including Myles. And then it would just be like kind of put to bed and I'd go back to Las Vegas and get on with it. But it went on for, 6 years until we took our little break. And it'll be 8 years in April then since we started doing that.
Then what was the conversation? Was there a conversation when you knew you were officially part of this new gang that Slash had gotten together? When did you have like an official conversation, or it kind of just organically happened playing shows?
I don't remember any full conversation. I mean, there was definitely had to be a conversation with management about getting I don't know, just getting that all together.
Like the not even counting like the contract lawyer bullshit. I mean, just like Slash is just like, hey man, now that I remember who you are, I'm sure he doesn't talk like that. He doesn't sound like a 30-year-old Jew. But when was the conversation? Were you just along for the ride, I guess, or was there any sort of?
I think
hey,
it was.
you're the guy?
I don't recall any conversation about like, okay, so this is going to be your life for the next 18 to 24 months, at the time. Like the first record we toured for probably almost 2 years. It just sort of, we're going to see what happens and off we go.
Then how did you play? And that's what you were saying. You had this double life and you had just bought a house. So, and I've been in that situation. I mean, not your situation, but a much lower level when you have, maybe different jobs available to you and, hey, what do I do with this job? Now I have this other opportunity, and the other opportunity is, they'll say, hey, you're going to start, March 5th, and they kiss, it's been an HR problem. Well, we're going to start next month, and you're like, well, what about my other job? They need a 2-week notice, so it's like kind of the same thing in a very minuscule level.
Well, it was jarring, because I had like my whole other life in Vegas, and I hated having to leave everybody high and dry in any way, shape, or form. So. But I was, anytime I wasn't doing Slash, I would just come back to Vegas and do this. And I was sort of double dutying for a few years, actually. For a couple of years, 2-3 years, I sort of did both until the Slash world just basically was so all-encompassing that it was just, I had no life at all other than, playing music, which is, the best kind of life to have. But it just sort of became... slowly evident that this Slash guy that I, gotten to know just doesn't slow down. Like there's no such thing as like, if he can stay on the road or stay in a studio, if he's not on the road, he's in a studio. Like he just kind of wants to be constantly working. So I learned that pretty quickly because it was just sort of like we were out on the road through 2010 through 2011. And then out of nowhere, just standing backstage one day, he goes, So I think we're going to make a record with the band. And I go, like us? He goes, yeah. And I go, oh, cool. So then we went in 2012 and did Apocalyptic Love. And that took, that was like 2 years on the road. And then 2014, we put out World on Fire and went back on the road till 2016. So yeah, it's like, he just, He's a machine. Honestly, it's like it's one of the most impressive things to me to this day. You know, I see him all the time. It's, you know, he's always got something going on. He's always got a guitar in his hands. He's always trying to. I always kind of find it, you know, like in saying being around someone like Gene Simmons or whoever, where it's like where money really isn't even a factor anymore. Like, so what really is the motivation to keep going? You know. Mm-hmm. I guess it's just music. You know, I mean, I guess this is what I do, and I love doing this, and that's what I'm going to do. And I look at guys like Slash, and I find it quite inspiring because I don't know if I have that gene or not. If it was like, if I had $1 gazillion, I don't know if I would be like, I'm good. You know, it's like kind of just check out into, you know, Howard Hughes land and just kind of hide in my house, or if I would actually, I mean, obviously I think I would keep playing music because I love it so much, but
I guess it depends. Another parallel to another conversation we had on this podcast with Christopher Thorne from Blind Melon, and when he when they found Travis, their new lead singer, several years ago, and they wanted to be Blind Melon again, do shows. You know, we were talking about how people just thought it was a money grab for him, and he actually took 5 times less money than what he was doing in producing. And so he's like, this is my band. These are songs I can get to play because you know, Shannon passed away, you know, and he just does it for the love of it. I mean, he has money. I mean, he doesn't have Slash money. He doesn't have Gene Simmons money, but he has money. So I would like to think, you know, especially someone like you, who's been playing, you know, who's been on the grind. You know, it's not like you all of a sudden were picked up by Slash when you were 15. You've been on the grind. I would like to think you have that kind of DNA, that gene, pun intended, I guess, with being Gene Simmons, to be the same way. So that is fascinating, and that is cool that you're kind of just like, yeah, the band? You mean us? And you end up making great records. I mean, I didn't know what to, like, all of us G&R fans, before they got back together, you know, of course, we're paying attention to Chinese Democracy. We're paying attention to what Slash is doing.
I was too, you know. I mean, like, I was part of the same program. I was like, you know, I'm like, hey, you know, Slash has a Snake Pit record out, great. It's Chinese Democracy, great. You know, like I was like kind of invested in all of it. So yeah, it's weird to consider, like, you know, that, you know, in this conversation right now, that somehow Apocalyptic Love and World on Fire falls into this same chapter of like the other stuff that these guys do. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just makes you think. And you mentioned you know, Snake Pit, and we had Rod Jackson on. As far as, you know, I know it wasn't the second Snake Pit record, but some of them were meant for, you know, Guns N' Roses songs. So you don't, you know, sometimes I visualize.
Imagine that they would.
Imagine just. Yeah, these could also be Guns N' Roses songs as well, and the same thing in Chinese. I'm like, this could be, yes, it's Bucket. You know, maybe this could be Slash's parts. But taking a few steps back, since, you know, you're also a fan, and that's what this is. We're all just fans. When was the first time you saw Guns N' Roses, or did you see the original band ever?
I never saw the original band, honestly. Okay. By the time Guns N' Roses was around, you know, I was young, but I was playing in bands and playing all the time. I never saw a lot of shows. You know, a lot of friends will say to me, you didn't see that show, this Key show from our youth? And I'll go like, no, dude, I was playing that night. You know, so I was constantly playing shows, 6-7 nights a week. So I missed everything. I never saw Aerosmith for years. I never saw Alice Cooper for years. You know, so all these key bands that all my friends had seen, I kind of had missed. I mean, I saw a lot in my teens, obviously, and a lot in my youth. But once I became a working musician, I was always working. I sort of missed a lot of stuff. And it's not like, you know, I'll just see Guns N' Roses next time they come back. You know, it's like Guns N' Roses came to our neck of the woods once and then vanished for 2 years and then came back, and then that was it. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure, especially.
Like the window of time that Guns was actually around is not that long. I mean, the original Guns.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my consciousness of rock was they had already broken up, and I think Snake Pit had already. We said Snack Pit. That's a new band of mine. I'm going to start that.
It's a restaurant you should open.
I should. Snake Pit was around, and Chinese Democracy was still just a myth. So all I had were the videos and, you know, the perhaps chance to see them. But you'll appreciate this though. Totally. Years ago when it was still what Dee Snider says Rose and Roses, when they were touring with, I think it was with Bumble and Robin, not with Robin Fink, with Bumble and
DJ.
Was DJ in the band yet? No, I don't think he. Yeah, it might have been DJ at this time because I saw that version a few times and there had been lineup changes each time. But my Canadian ex-girlfriend, she, she's from Ottawa, and the first time they came around, she had to drive to Toronto, which is 4 hours because they wouldn't go near her. But not in this lifetime, they had an Ottawa date, but. Sometimes you got it is, and that was honestly a lot of questions we got for you. As far as we can kind of segue that in, peppering our conversation with questions.
Sure.
As far as are you going to do any solo dates? We're getting questions as far as the U.S., Hungary, because not everybody. I'm lucky being in New York and living on Long Island.
Yeah.
I get everybody, but
Totally,
if you're in these small towns. And what I hear, fans seem to be more appreciative because you go out of your way to see them. And it's not in New York City. It's not, again, Long Island is still a major market. So I've never had a problem seeing somebody.
No, not at all. I mean, well, for me, it's like the Slash thing really opened up a whole other world for us. Like I say, it's funny to imagine now, having not done Slash and just stayed in Vegas, I would have been perfectly happy. I was content as could be, but it's so funny how the Slash thing really opened up a whole other world. So now it's like the last show I did was I played the Viper Room in Los Angeles for my birthday in December. And people come from all over the world to this thing. There's Japanese people there. I'm like, and part of me wants to go, what are you doing here? You came all the way for this, and I really appreciate it, but it's sort of like, it's really kind of opened up this whole other world of just people come from all over the place because of this connection to this much bigger thing. And so something like Europe, I've always intended to go over there as and do the solo show over there. A lot of it's always scheduling. Like I'm crazy busy all the time, like I suppose everybody is, but I've always got something going on. And over the Brent Fitz from Slash's band and I both played with with Bruce Kulick from Kiss, the non-makeup years of Kiss, and his brother Bob Kulick, who did a bunch of session work with Kiss. Mm-hmm. So we did a thing on the Kiss cruise, and that thing has turned into a whole other thing now. We're doing a thing called Kiss Indy in Indianapolis in May, and it's all these other things sort of pop up, and I kind of always got like a lot of things kind of on the go and keep it kind of fun and interesting. So these things sort of keep me, largely kind of in the States right now. But as far as getting to Europe or these different places that people ask to go to, trust me, if I could, I'd go everywhere anytime I could.
But it's cool still hearing that, like you said. I mean, of course, scheduling, that's the name of the game now.
Yeah.
Even for us, just for today. But
totally.
It's cool, and this is a great segue into the questions and literally all over the world that I'm getting them, and I'm kind of blown away in a much lesser extent of this thing that I'm not, this isn't an official G&R podcast. It's just a silly little thing that I'm doing, but being connected to this larger thing. So that was part of the question from young Swedish Vinyl. I guess he's obviously from Sweden. From my G&R, he wanted to know how it was playing with the Kulick brothers on the Kiss cruise. How it was playing with them.
Oh, it was amazing. We've known Bruce for years. Brent Fitz played in, after Bruce Kulick left Kiss, he and John Corabi, who was in Motley Crue for a minute, they put together a band called Union, and Brent Fitz played drums for it. So, I've known Bruce through Brent for years. And back in around 2010, Bruce was releasing a solo album, and he had myself and Brent. I think Fitz played on the record. Yeah, I'm sure Fitz played on the record. I never played on the record, but we did his CD release party, and I sang and played guitar. And we did like a ton of the Kiss music from the era that he was in, 80s and 90s. And oddly enough, it was filmed for an episode of Gene Simmons' Family Jewels. Nick Simmons got up and sang with us, and Gene was there, and Eric Singer and Tommy Thayer. So it was a whole thing. Shannon Tweed and Sophie, their daughter, was there. So, I've sort of been in this camp for a long time. Within a month maybe we were both in Slash's band. It seems like it was like very quickly we were that all kind of spun into being in Slash's band. But of course I've gotten to know Bob over the years too, and Bob Kulick. So when all this kind of came up, this Kiss Cruise thing, I was like, yeah, it sounds like fun. Just get the two Kulick brothers and we'll play stuff from the music that Bob played on. We'll do a bunch of stuff that Bruce played on, and it was really. When you're playing a show, sometimes you have no concept of how it's going over. You're just kind of playing, and you're hoping, what are the words to the song? Or how does this go to the C here? Just trying to do your thing. And when I walked off stage, and I was kind of like, that was a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed that. The crowd was singing along. We had a blast. And the next thing I knew, it was just this huge, like, online, people were just raving about, this thing. And I think a lot of it's because a lot of that material doesn't get played live anymore because Kiss is is a much larger entity in terms of like they cover such a larger gamut of key songs within the Kiss catalog. And with Bruce, it was a lot more, and Bob too, it was a lot more, deep cuts and for the hardcore fan kind of audience. And yeah, so it was really well received and really went over really well. We're doing it again, like I say, in May 12th, 13th in Indianapolis.
What's the Gene Simmons thing that you got later today, the vault thing?
Well, he's got this vault.
And by the way, I say today because I guess it's a podcast, but it's I try to be in real time, so it's Sunday,
right.
The 11th of February.
That's right. Yeah, he's in Las Vegas doing this thing over at the Rio, which is the where the Kiss mini golf is. And he's released this vault, which is some crazy thing with a lot of music and book and a book and a bunch of stuff in it. And it's the Gene Simmons vault.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, apparently. I don't really know exactly. But he's doing some sort of something with it today, and Brent Fitz is going to play drums, and it's like, let's go, you can jam. And I'm like, what is this? What's going on? Which seems to be a large... Whenever you hang around with Brent Fitz, a lot of your life is, what's happening? What? Someone puts a guitar in your hands, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. So I'm not really entirely sure what exactly it is, but Gene's doing his vault thing, and I'm just tagging along to kind of to check it out. It should be pretty fun.
Awesome. So next question, I want to get to, and this is the celebrity question before we get to our listeners. I was a little surprised. Someone named Chris Jericho.
Stupid idiot.
I'm glad I tagged him because, doing research on you, that you once had a cover band with Jericho, right? There was a Canadian cover band called Coverboy.
You just made the list.
And so what was it like? Did you sing about hockey and Moose or Rush cover band? Tell me about that. I love it. I mean, I'm such a huge wrestling fan in Jericho and fan of Canadians also. So I want to hear more about this. His question though. Before that, he goes. I guess got distracted. Chris Jericho goes, "Dear Mr. Kerns, we all know that the world of Oz is a very funny place, but what are the streets paved with?" So that's the question from Chris Jericho.
Stupid idiot.
The streets are paved with gold. Everybody knows that.
Yes, I know. So you could see the tweet. He really retweeted it. It's amazing.
I know. That's actually he's referencing a cartoon that used to play it was a Canadian cartoon. It was called The Land of Oz. It was basically the Wizard of Oz in animated form that we all kind of we did a podcast with him one time, and it was we've done two actually. One was about Canadian music, one was about Canadian television. So, because he grew up in Winnipeg, which is the province over from where I grew up, and so he's a really good friend and an amazing guy and an amazing talent and all of those things. But yeah, he and Brent Fitz did a thing called Coverboy, and I played in it too, and it was largely just kind of like playing all Canadian music. And it was sort of like everything from Loverboy to Rush to, I don't know.
Avril Lavigne? Bieber?
Sure, yeah. we haven't gone that far.
Okay.
Mostly the classic stuff. April Wine, Chilliwack. I don't know if you know any of that stuff. But Brent Fitz and I have have sort of spun that project into this new thing called Toque, which is you can find it on Spotify or Apple or iTunes, whatever. But it's basically the same concept, but we just sort of started to record music with the guitar player Corey Churko, who's from Shania Twain's band. He played in Kelly Clarkson as well. He's Canadian as well, but he lives in the States. So a bunch of us Canadians down there just started kind of recording music. Again, Loverboy, the list goes on, and did an entire record called Giver, and it's we call the band Toque, which is basically a beanie, ski cap, wool cap kind of thing. In Canada, Toque is a very common thing. But anyway, you can find it on there. It's a good time.
So
it's just basically, it's a lot of like expatriates. You always see British people down here being way more British than they would if they were living in England. But that's kind of what it's like.
Overcompensating.
Yeah, it's kind of like being Canadian living in the States. I go to my friends' houses and it's just all Canadian music, and I go, dude, they just kind of like always kind of.
Yeah, my ex was like that. Whenever she would visit, she just got more Canadian. I'm like, relax. Like, I didn't go up, I guess maybe when I went up there, it might be more New York, Tony Danza, but I don't.
Right.
It's not a conscious decision, I guess. That's so weird. Next question, which comes from one of my buddies, Tomislav from Croatia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's going to be, in addition to interviewing rock stars just like you, I had one interview with a fan from Ireland, and I want to do more.
That's great.
Because he fought in the war and used to, kill people while listening to Appetite for Destruction. So, I mean, I got to hear a story, Tomislav. It'll happen. So he wants to know what show you did with Slash and Myles Kennedy that is something you remember.
Oh, it's funny because I remember there's a weird sort of parallel where you remember everything and don't remember anything. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when people talk to me about wow, you've been to Belarus and Beirut and to Mumbai, and you're like, and I go, most of my memories are the shows. I don't really remember a whole lot of because I'm kind of that way. I'm like, to me, it's like playing the music is the most important part of everything. So, going to these places and seeing amazing things, seeing the Colosseum in Rome and all that it's amazing. It's going to the Louvre in Paris is wow. But to me, it's always the most important thing ever is the 2 hours I'm on stage with the guys. I do remember Mumbai in India very, very, very well. I remember playing Wembley in England. The download festivals in England, those kind of things are all those things you grew up with, like Castle Donington, the Wembley Arena, those kind of things are all these sort of key things that really stick out to me. Oddly enough, playing like things like the Roxy with Slash, playing the Troubadour, we did a run of Sunset Strip shows, the Whiskey A Go-Go, just to promote World on Fire when it came out. Those were really key shows. We've done some amazing shows in Paris. All the shows in South America are insane. You can never forget those. It's hard for me to really kind of pinpoint. I kind of remember everything. A lot of the key things are things like Lemmy being on stage with us on multiple occasions. Sure. Those things really stick out.
So that could
Rick
be
Nielsen from Cheap Trick.
Then I can piggyback with a follow-up question from another fan, Mr. Mac from Ireland. So with maybe Lemmy being on stage, were there any moments that made you stop and go, this is really fucking happening? This is like, I was a kid from Saskatchewan. This is my life right now? You've had several of those. That's what to say. Every time. Yeah,
Alice Cooper, like all those kind of things. But Lemmy was the big one in many ways for me because I'm such a fan, and not only just a fan of his music, but just a fan of him as a man. Like he was just really like when he walked into a room, you just like everything changed. It just kind of felt like Lemmy's here, but not in a really all-encompassing way because he was a very unassuming man in reality. He could be very chill. He'd be backstage at something, and there'd be like all this chaos going on, and Lemmy would be sitting in the corner reading a book. It was the weirdest thing. And you're like, wow, that's Lemmy. Like he's like the life of the party, but he's just sort of like total like Duval in like Apocalypse Now, where everything's exploding and he's just totally unaffected by it, because he's just seen it all.
That's why he was Lemmy.
That's why he was Lemmy, yeah. And then Alice, Alice Cooper. I mean, that's a massive deal every time he's around, and we've it's, when you're around Slash, you kind of, you just forget that he just sort of rolls in these kind of worlds. He was just on stage the other day. I didn't go to the show, but at the Roxy, he was, playing with Joe Perry, Johnny Depp. It's ridiculous when they start talking about these names. I'm like, it just sounds crazy to me.
Next question we got from Doug from Milwaukee. He wants to know.
Milwaukee?
Yes.
Which is Algonquin for the good land.
What is one thing you could tell us about Slash or Myles that maybe people don't know about them?
Well, I always say when it comes to Slash, I think people are really, I don't know. I don't even think my perception of Slash was correct when I went into it. He's a very thoughtful, well-spoken guy. It doesn't mean he doesn't curse like a sailor and everything else like the rest of us do, sure. But he reads these big books and he's very, intelligent and very soft-spoken in a way. You know what I mean? And I guess that's why the guitar does all the talking in a lot of ways. But he's a very intelligent guy. He knows a lot about a lot of stuff. If you want to sit down and talk about World War II or dinosaurs or reptiles, he's just like horror movies. He just knows a lot of stuff. He's not like this sort of rock and roll bonehead. Jack Daniels. He's just a real intelligent man. Myles is he's such a kind, soft-spoken, wonderful guy. You want to just protect him.
He's like a baby bird.
Even though God knows he's such a powerful, powerfully talented man and has done a lot of things. The only thing I could ever think about with Myles Kennedy, to tell anybody they don't know, is that he loves to look at puppies online. Like it's some sort of soothing factor of just some sort of soothing factor of I'll catch him just looking at just watching a live camera of these puppies. And I'm like, that's a thing? I didn't even know that was a thing.
Well, I do follow this. I prefer kittens because I'm allergic to dogs. But there's this one Facebook group called the Dodo, and I swear to God, if you're having a shit day, I mean, usually if you're on Facebook, everything is about Trump or people dying or whatever. And I guess I watched this video the other day about this squirrel, and it was acting like a cat at home, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever. Or same thing with an otter hanging out with the family dog. So I mean, these things make me so. Myles, it's okay if that's your, rock star pre-show honestly, ritual puppies.
I believe that that's exactly the effect. Is the kind of oh God, the dossier thing or some whatever thing's going on. You just got to sit down and look at some puppies and
you could do
your day.
You could be like Axl and just tweet simply "fuck Nunez," or you can look at puppies instead. I love it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too much. And in this, I do have to ask: are there any plans? Because I know Myles just. He put out a new solo record, correct? Yeah. It's very. He played a bunch of tracks for us, and it's next level good. It's very different, which I think is exciting because I think that it's for a solo artist to put out records that sound exactly like the projects that they're already doing seems kind of weird. This was a little bit more acoustic, a little bit more bluesy in a weird way. It's just really great, and. He's got that going on. We're always in constant contact, and we're always, a lot of it's scheduling and talking. Fitz is playing in Gene Simmons' band right now, and I've always got 1,000 things going on. But we're always in constant contact, and it's just a matter of time before we get in the same room together. Guns N' Roses is finishing up some shows in the summer, so who knows? I'm hoping sometime this year we'll, fall into each other's arms. I don't know. Love embrace.
Yeah.
So that includes, after those G&R dates, you think you'll work together, / Myles Kennedy, you have maybe another Conspirators, I don't know, if a record or shows, or is it all up in the air as far as the future?
It's nothing's really sort of nailed down. It's just kind of constantly cats in the cradle. We'll get together then, son.
We'll have a good time then.
At some point we definitely intend to to kind of reboot. It's just sort of like, everybody's got a lot on their plate, and it's sort of like there'll be a time when it's like the right time to do it, and then I'm being straight up honest. There's never been a conversation about there's just no way we're going to be able to do this anymore. I 100% believe that this will reconvene at some point.
That's going to make a lot of people happy, including myself.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, for me, it's like, if I felt like we did, we were just kind of like treading water and weren't really doing good work. You know what I mean? Like if I just thought it was just something that we just kind of did to kill time, like, then we do these records and go on the road and wank off. It's like, no, you'd be surprised to know how seriously and how precious we were about the music we were making and about the band that we had built and developed. That includes Frank, and that includes, the entire lineup. It means a lot to us, and I mean that all the way around. Speaking, for the guys.
That's what I love about this G&R universe. All these kind of, spin-off sitcoms, for a lack of a better analogy.
We're like the Mork and Mindy over here.
Yeah.
Nanu.
It's still loved by the original fan base. So people want to hear more / Myles Kennedy, more Todd Kerns, and again, same thing with me. And I liked that first record where he worked with a bunch of different lead singers, and maybe he'll do that again. But even on Apocalyptic Love, and I was on a terrestrial station and I was the assistant program director at the time, so I made sure I played that shit. I made sure I played You're a Lie and Anastasia and Apocalypse, the self-titled track, because those are great tunes. And at that time, it was that or Chinese Democracy, which I loved equally. So I don't want to choose. There's all these other options out there, in addition to Guns N' Roses, that I still want to hear. So I'm glad that, it's like this. When I usually end the show, I always end the show by the Axl quote as far as when Chinese Democracy is going to come out. He's like, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it. So that was still encouraging. Right. I don't think it'll be a Chinese Democracy kind of wait with you guys. But
well, I mean, that's for me. It's always been a case of no matter what, you're going to have the diehards who just only want to hear Guns N' Roses or only want to hear, like we deal with it in Alter Bridge now. You know what I mean? Like people who love Myles as Alter Bridge.
Do they ask for Creed songs? Is that what happens?
I don't think they even ask for Creed songs at Alter Bridge.
So that's what I'm asking. I'm like, they're not shouting "Arms wide open." That's not happening. No.
Yeah, I've never experienced it. We've had Mark on stage many times too, actually.
Okay.
Mark Tremonti, but
sure, that's why I ask. That's why I ask.
But I really believe that we're making good music, and I think that we're doing good work, and I think that that's sort of at the end of the day, it's like. Whether you're a diehard Guns N' Roses fan or a diehard Alter Bridge fan, I think that what we do is something somewhere in the middle of both of those bands. You know what I mean? Like it's something like we do something kind of its own thing, and Slash gets to really kind of, do what he wants to do in a funny way. You know what I mean? Like I think the Guns N' Roses thing is so gigantic. It's so, there's so many more personalities. Duff is a huge, has a huge voice in that. Axl obviously is such a huge voice that I think that the compromise that goes on in a much larger band like that of all those sort of cooks in the kitchen, there's a lot of different things to serve there. I would be really excited. People keep saying to me, "Are you worried if Guns N' Roses does a new record?" I go, "Dude, as a fan, I think it'd be fucking awesome." You know what I mean? Like, I'm just that guy. Like, I don't really lose a lot of sleep about like, oh, what's that going to mean for me? It's like, it ain't about me. I knew that going into playing with Slash in the first place. I go, this isn't about me. This is about a much, much bigger picture. Guns N' Roses is a history of rock and roll band. You know what I mean? Like, it's like when they got back together, it was like I was the one going, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
cool.
That's very exciting to me. Sure, it's like it means I got to go and do other things, but that's not really the point. You know what I mean?
But you have your Vegas thing and your GED now to fall back on, thanks to your mom.
Exactly.
So you're
thanks
good.
to the GED, I can Walmart greet all day long. Yeah, no, they so to me it's like we've been dealing with this band since the beginning because Myles Kennedy was always a member of Alter Bridge. There was never kind of like defined break in that. It was like, no, Myles will always go back and do a run with Alter Bridge. So we always sort of took a break, and this one just has been an extended break, sort of like, and to me, it's like, if it all ended tomorrow and it was like, well, Guns N' Roses and Alter Bridge are going to be the focus, I wouldn't lose a wink of sleep about it. It's kind of like, I want what's best for my friends, and I care so much about Myles and Slash that whatever they chose to do is cool with me. It's like I love making music with my friends, but at the end of the day, it's sort of like, I know that there's more to life. In a funny way, we've all kind of grown up and realized that, maybe just, making a bunch of rock and roll racket isn't necessarily, the most important thing as far as like the legacy goes. We've made 2 great records. I distinctly believe there will be a third, and who knows from there. If we manage to get something together in 2018, like I said, that means 8 years. And Slash and I both, kind of offhandedly mentioned that that's longer than Double Revolver was around. So it's a weird thing to consider that. But like I said, I mean, guys like me, Eric Dover, Rod Jackson, the list goes on and on. Gilby are all these people from a giant family tree called Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
And we, like Dizzy, like playing with Dizzy over New Year's was weird to be on stage with him, doing a lot of the same songs that I do with Slash. That's just the way it's going to go.
I wasn't playing with Hookers and Blow. I was working the night they came to play. They came to Queens here, and I was working that night. I really wanted to go.
Oh, cool.
They're still doing it. They're still on tour, right? Because I see Don Jameson tweeting dates.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Chips Enough is playing bass right now. So.
Yeah, he randomly went into my friend's vinyl shop in Massachusetts to pick up his own record.
Hilarious.
To buy his own
That's
vinyl.
Hilarious.
And my friend
I
had
love it. That's hilarious. Chip is the best. Chip was in Adler's Appetite for a long time.
Sure. And that's another thing that's a family tree, even though, yes, he's direct family, but just the offshoot, the Atlas Appetite family, and Alex Grassi and Chips Enough now being part of this weird family
So trust
tree.
me, like, Jeff from Loaded, Duff's Loaded, and all those guys, those guys are all friends of mine, and we're all part of, like, an extended family thing. But the Hookers and Blow was a lot of fun. I mean, like, I've known Dizzy for years, too. He used to get up and jam with my old band years ago. And he's got a solo album coming out right away, and it's great. And, those guys are all glad to see everybody keep cranking along.
All right, and so the most important thing, you. So what's going on with you right now? I know today you got the Gene Simmons thing, and you're always taking directions you don't know where you're going. So I know you can only answer this to a certain extent, but what are the immediate plans for Todd Dammit Kerns? I love that name.
Yeah, well, it's been around for a long time, yeah. We do, the next big focus is this Kiss Indie in May. Largely I'm in the studio right now working on Took 2, which is that Canadian tribute band I was telling you about. And Fitz and I are both, most of our times in Los Angeles right now, working on that. And then, I'm working on another solo album. So it never ends. It sort of feels like you're never really working on just one thing. You're working on multiple things all the time. Fielding a bunch of other things that have sort of come up over the summer, like people are asking me to come play with them. And I'm like, well, if I can make it work, we'll see. But largely, it's just sort of like constantly working on this project, the Canadian tribute thing, the solo thing, and then these Kulik Brother shows as well. So that keeps me really more than busy, trust me.
Any future dates with our friends Paradise Kitty?
No, I love those guys, though. They're fantastic. They played a Hookers and Blow show in Hermosa Beach in California.
Sure. Because I had Jenna on, and everyone says the same thing about you, that you're like one of the nicest people in rock, and that's I feel the same way. There's nothing to the contrary after this conversation, and I knew it right away. I'm like, oh, he's from Canada. That's why. Everyone's so nice
yeah,
there.
Exactly.
You have a handsome prime minister. Everything.
The yoga Pilates is prime minister. Yeah.
Yes, that we are all part of people kind, not mankind. We're part of people kind. That's
There you go. Yeah.
so,
That's very Canadian.
so we can keep track of you, of course, at Todd Dammit Kerns on Twitter,
that's
right?
me on Twitter. Todd Kerns on Instagram. ToddKerns.com is my website, and you can usually find me on Facebook. Although that's always a bit of a shit show, but I'm pretty visible on the internet. I try to be around.
Yeah, you respond to a lot of listeners, and there were a lot of. I would get people that would say, "Hey, no question," and just say thank you for the music, which is just cool.
That means the world to me.
And is it weird for you at all? Because I would also see, because you're so humble, fan Twitter page is dedicated to you.
It's not weird. I mean, it's
one thing if you're Elvis, I guess. I mean, believe me, you're Todd Kerns again. You're kind of like the Elvis of Saskatchewan, but it's like you're having fan sites just with hearts around, and people love you, obviously. But it's not. Is it weird to you?
No, not really. I mean, I think it's sort of you feel. I never let that stuff get to my head. I'm always sort of like,
Clearly.
That's really awesome that people have connected to the music and to the entire thing, because it's such a music is like it's my life, and it's always exciting to meet somebody else whose life is all about music, and that's largely what all those people connect to is another music nerd like me.
And that's what this podcast is, just people connecting to each other.
Yeah, that's what I love.
I love it, Todd. Thank you. I can't thank you enough for your time.
I appreciate it. No problem.
And if you ever want to put in a word, and I said the same thing to London, if Slash ever wants to talk about horror movies or dinosaurs, I'm in. It doesn't have to be, salacious conversation. We can talk about, blood and guts and stegosauruses and triceratops.
I always say, any advice I have is, if you ever want to talk to him, other than it would be very strange to just walk up and go, so the Tyrannosaurus,
That's me, though. I would do that.
But if you ever want to get him going, that's actually, I would do a little research beforehand about any sort of new dinosaur,
discovery,
and if you just brought that up to him, he would be like, well, actually, it's staggering. Like we go on these like dinosaur, these parks where they do like excavation work, and he will literally be not schooling them, but he's toe to toe with these guides, I would just be like, damn, he knows everything about these freaking things.
See, I would get a paleontologist co-host, and because I don't know what I'm
doing.
I'd be like, hey, I still watch Denver the Last Dinosaur on YouTube, and I still do my dinosaur toys, but no, that's awesome.
Sure.
So if you want to pass along that message, I don't believe you will.
I definitely will.
Okay. Well, Todd, thank you so much. Good luck at the Gene Simmons event today, and whether you're touring solo, whether it's with Myles, whatever it is, I hope one day to meet you when you're playing a date in the city of Long Island, and because it would be a pleasure. Because I've heard nothing but good things, so it would be a pleasure to shake your hand in real life as opposed to over the radio.
Well, if I'm ever in the neighborhood, definitely drop me a line.
I will. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Todd.
Bye-bye.
What a cool dude. I mean, what a cool dude. I mean, everybody was right when I announced that I was going to interview Todd today. He said, such a nice guy, such a nice guy. And you're right. You're absolutely right. So, and it is cool that we got to know that in the future, we could get new / Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. It's not dead. It's just a matter of when. So we have another Chinese democracy kind of thing to pay attention to. But still, that is positive news. I do want to mention something before this episode ends, and I didn't want to bring it up with Todd on the air because it is, I don't know, it's a heavy thing, but it's important to me, and I know it's important to many of you out there. One of the Facebook groups, Guns N' Roses Facebook groups that I'm in, G&R Fan Spot, not in this lifetime, I think that's what it's called. Thousands of followers. And I see this one person make a post that says, I mean, I got to be blunt about it. I'm going to end my life tonight. Thank you, Axl, for the great music. And for me, I know there are a lot of people who, we've gotten a lot of new listeners crazy people who have listened to every single episode. Some haven't, so I don't want to take for granted that if you do or don't know. But in the episode with Dave Kushner, I had mentioned I lost my dad the same way I lost Chris Cornell, or we lost Chris Cornell, same way we lost Chester Bennington. So I lost my dad maybe a year before Robin Williams, same shit. And I brought it up with Dave Kushner because this was right after Chris Cornell had passed, and all the G&R ties, and of course now they play Black Hole Sun live, and I mean, not like I needed a real segue to force it in, but yes, like at the end of the day, it is a G&R based podcast. So I saw this message, as did many of you who I know listened to this episode, and I didn't know what to do, even though with me in my life dealing with suicide in a lot of different areas, not just with my dad, but myself, friends. But I kind of just watched unfold all of you comment, I love you. Please don't do this, things that you say. And I'm like, okay, that's one thing to comment, but I would see other comments of, hey, I contacted this person's friend's family, going into their Facebook and, private DMing them, and hey, I spoke to this person's sister, and the guy's okay from what I understand. He thanked everybody for reaching out, and seeing all the comments say, hey, we Gunners stick together, you stay alive for the new Guns N' Roses record. So of course, tongue in cheek, but sometimes at your lowest, you need those kind of awkward laughs. So I bring that up for one. Kudos to my fellow Gunners. I mean, that was just amazing to see in a Guns N' Roses fan spot or Guns N' Roses group, because it's a very serious issue now. And I also will tie this in with Chris Cornell, because Vicky, his widow, I follow her on Twitter, and she tweeted out, I don't know how much you read some of the articles, people like, it's a conspiracy and all this. The worst things are worse about with Chester Bennington, with things with money and people shitting on Linkin Park. Like, if you're not a fan, who gives a shit? I mean, their kids will read these things, all these asshole commenters and blabbermouth and, who have nothing nice to say just because you weren't a fan of a band. Go fuck yourself. Anyway, obviously this is an emotional part of it. So Vicky Cornell, this was yesterday, as I'm recording this, to all those that love my husband, my children, and me, who have given so much love and support through this horrible time, who are appalled at all that, who are appalled at what's been out there about me and my children. Please take comfort knowing that they do not hide behind their screens. So it's just disgusting that she has to deal with this publicly. I know what I've had to deal with privately, and, anyone in your life, whether it's, like Vicky, your husband, for me, my father, it could be friend, cousin. This is a horrible thing for someone to go through, and they have to deal with it publicly. I can't even imagine, especially for their children who can't process this shit yet. So, for me, I try to do my due diligence now. Yes, some of it's cathartic for my own purposes, but if you can help one person, you never know. Just like how all you Gunners helped that one person. That makes it all worth it. So I responded to Vicky Cornell, for your family to have all of this out in the open only adds to a family's grieving process. It's unfair to you and your family, especially Chris. Take solace in your voice, helping me and countless others. That's what matters. # keep the promise. That's her hashtag about Chris. So it made me feel good that she responded. See, it's these little connections. She wrote, thank you for not only your supportive kind words, but for your understanding. Helps to keep me going too. # keep the promise. And that's gotten a lot of, retweets and likes since then. So through this terrible thing, I had a mini Twitter connection with, Vicky Cornell. So that's what this podcast is, or what these fan sites are, these Guns N' Roses fan sites, whether Facebook, whether it's my G&R forum, it's the connections that we have. And that's why I do these interviews. It's more, I want to hear cool stories about rock and roll, but find out about the people. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to fucking die. So try not to die on purpose. I know it's very hard. Mental health is a big issue. It's why I loved Guns N' Roses, why I got into it. Before I was really aware of my depression, why I identified with Axl's anger issues. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get off the stage and punch somebody in the face. I'm so angry. But there's always help. There's absolutely always help. So it made me feel better to be a Guns N' Roses fan, to see you guys all act out in support of somebody in need. That was awesome. So if you are ever in need and you have a story to tell, I'm here for you as well. And I will mention, just like I did we had our first Spotlight episode with Sir Kevin. And Sir Kevin from Ireland, who had a tough upbringing, and of course involved, him hiding under his bed, listening to Appetite while listening, his fucking spouse, his dad's beating his mom. I don't like talking about it when I'm not the person saying it. So go back and listen to Kevin's episode if you would like to hear about his story, which has a happy ending. He's working. He's working on his life, as we all are. So if you have a story that you want to get out there, no matter how depressing it may be, I will do my best to, make it stupid and make it palatable and not make it too depressing of an episode.
Stupid idiot.
See, I just have sound buttons that'll make it easier for all of us. So I did want to get that out there on this episode, because it's my first time recording since I did see that fallout, I guess, for a lack of a better word, on Facebook. Again, I'm very proud of you, those who did react and save that man. That's what you did, all through Guns N' Roses. So that's pretty fucking awesome. Guns N' Roses, in a way, saves a lot of us. So we all help out when we need to. So what do I need? I feel like I need some after-school special music. Anyway, this has been episode 46 of the AFD show. Again, thank you so much to Todd Kerns. I don't know if it's going to be next episode, but again, I had a nice email conversation with Roberta Freeman, of course, one of the touring backup vocalists on the User Illusion tour. Tracy and Roberta, they were given a shout out on Knocking on Heaven's Door on the Live Era CD. So should be speaking with her in a week or so. She was just at NAMM. Want to talk to her about that. The future guest, well, we're always going to find out. It's week to week. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, would I be interviewing Todd Kerns, I would have said no. A week ago, I would have said yes, because I knew then. So pay attention. Follow us. Follow us on iTunes, SoundCloud, iHeart, Spreaker. Follow, subscribe, and leave a review. More people know about us, the more guests I'm going to get, and the more content for all of us, and more Guns N' Roses good times. That was a dumb thing to say.
You just made the list.
Sorry, Jericho. So that concludes episode 46. As far as the next episode of the AFD show, when will you see it? Well, in the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
Stupid idiot.
You've been listening to the distorted minds of Appetite for Distortion. Follow the guys on Twitter at the AFD Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/the AFD Show.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home. Home.